It doesn't hit you all at once. It's more like a slow unraveling, like the life you once held together with both hands begins to slip through your fingers, grain by grain, and you're just standing there, watching it fall. No warning, no clear sign, just a gnawing emptiness that grows louder by the day. You were the one who always smiled, the one who held it together, the one who tried harder, forgave faster, gave more, and asked for less. You were the glue, the helper, the heart. And now, you're exhausted. But it's not just the kind of tired that sleep fixes. It's a soul ache, the kind that makes everything feel off, misaligned, like you don't belong in your own skin anymore. Like the life you built isn't really yours. You've tried everything: books, affirmations, yoga at sunrise, letting go, holding on, being grateful, even when it hurt. But nothing fills that hollow place. Not really. And here's the part no one tells you. This is not the end. This is the doorway. In this video, we're going to walk straight into the heart of that dark, disoriented place, the emotional wilderness, where so many spiritually awakening souls lose their way before they rise. We're going to talk about the ache no one understands, the confusion that feels like madness, and why you're not broken, you're becoming. You will see yourself in this. You will feel heard, maybe for the first time in years. And by the end, you will know something deep in your bones: you were never alone in this. If you've ever felt like the path toward your healing made everything worse before it got better, if you've ever stared at your ceiling wondering what the hell is wrong with you, stay with me. Subscribe if you feel something stir inside you, like a whisper, like a remembering, like truth. Now breathe. Let's begin. They never tell you that awakening doesn't feel like light at first. It feels like grief. It's not the kind of grief that comes with funerals and condolences. It's quieter, invisible. It lives behind your eyes. It shows up in moments when everything seems fine, and yet your chest tightens with a sadness you can't name. You wake up one morning and realize you don't recognize the life you've built. The people, the habits, the dreams, they don't feel like home anymore. You're surrounded by the echoes of a self you no longer are. And it's terrifying. Because what happens when you outgrow your own life? No one prepares you for this unraveling. No one warns you that awakening isn't just a rise. It's a fall into silence, into solitude, into the parts of you you've been running from your entire life. And there's this strange, lonely place right before everything shifts, where it feels like the universe has abandoned you, where prayer feels hollow, where synchronicities dry up, and where nothing you used to do brings comfort anymore. This is the desert of the soul. This is where the old you dies, but not with fire and glory, not with ceremony or witnesses. No, this death is soft, slow. It feels like forgetting, like fading, like losing touch with who you thought you were. And it's in this moment, when you are the most lost, that something ancient within you stirs. It's not dramatic, it's not loud. It's a quiet voice, a barely there whisper that says, this is part of it. You may not believe it. You may curse the heavens, cry on your bathroom floor, scream into the night because you feel so completely alone in your ache. But the soul does not break you to hurt you. It breaks you to rebuild you, because all those years you were surviving being good, being kind, being strong. You buried parts of yourself just to be loved. You silenced your truth to keep the peace. You shrank so others could be comfortable. And now, the soul is calling all of it back. The tears, the rage, the silence, the longing. It's not weakness, it's resurrection. And you don't need to have it all figured out to begin again. You just need to stay in the space between who you were and who you're becoming. Stay even when it makes no sense, even when it hurts, especially then, because no transformation comes without a sacred undoing. And if you feel lost, it's not because you're failing, it's because you're finally being honest. There's a particular pain that comes when your soul is waking up and you realize how many years you spent performing a version of yourself just to be accepted. You see the masks, the pleasing, the pretending. You see how often you said yes when your whole body screamed no. You see how often you chose silence over truth, safety over freedom, and it hurts. It hurts to wake up, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's when the grief hits hardest, not just for what happened, but for all the versions of you who didn't know better, who were just trying to survive. The girl who thought being quiet made her lovable. The boy who thought being strong meant never crying. The adult who built a life out of everything they were taught to want and then felt nothing but numbness when they got it. You mourn all of them. And in that mourning, something sacred happens. You start coming home to yourself. Not the self shaped by fear or guilt or need. The real self, the one who was always waiting beneath the rubble. And you realize maybe being lost was never the problem. Maybe it was the only way back. There's a moment in the quiet after the storms of heartbreak and unraveling where something strange begins to happen. You stop needing to be understood. Not because you've given up, but because you've started to listen to your own voice. For the first time, your truth matters more than their approval. Your boundaries matter more than their comfort. Your peace matters more than being liked. And this is when the world around you starts to shift. Friends you used to call every day begin to fade. Conversations that once felt full now feel hollow. You notice how often you used to abandon yourself just to keep the energy balanced, just to make others feel okay. But now, you're tired of bleeding for connection. You're tired of being the one who always understands, always forgives, always bends. And there's guilt, yes. There's shame too, because no one taught you how to choose yourself without feeling selfish. No one taught you that self-love isn't rebellion, it's remembrance. So you stand in this strange new place, no longer the person you once were, not yet the person you're becoming. And it feels like floating in space. But there's power in this pause, this in-between, this sacred discomfort, because something is rooting itself in you now, something ancient, something that cannot be taken. Your worth is no longer negotiable. Your light is no longer for sale. And the wounds that once defined you, they are becoming your wisdom. You see, every spiritually awakened soul walks through this fire, this dark night, this disorientation. And not because they are cursed, but because they are chosen to be the first in their lineage to break the chains. You are not weak for feeling lost. You are strong for not numbing it. You are brave for staying awake. And even though the world still tells you to move on, to stay positive, to fix yourself fast, you're beginning to understand healing is not a race. It's a remembering. It's the slow, patient return to who you were before the world told you who to be. And it's messy, wholly exhausting, but every time you say no more to the pain that was passed down to you, every time you say I deserve more, even when your voice shakes, every time you rest instead of hustle, cry instead of suppress, walk away instead of please, you're becoming free. Not perfect, not always certain, but free. And that freedom doesn't always look like what you imagined. Sometimes it's just sitting alone in silence, no longer afraid of your own thoughts. Sometimes it's deleting the message you used to send just to keep the peace. Sometimes it's letting people leave without chasing them, without explaining, without begging to be seen. And that silence, it becomes your sanctuary. Because when you stop trying to convince the world of your worth, you begin to feel it. In your breath, in your bones, in the quiet between heartbreaks. You stop searching for the light because you realize you are the light. And the darkness was never there to destroy you. It was there to show you just how bright you could burn. There's a strange kind of clarity that arrives after the chaos. Not all at once, not loud and obvious like some grand awakening. It's quiet, gentle, almost imperceptible at first, like a softness returning to your chest after years of bracing, like noticing the way your breath doesn't catch in your throat anymore when you speak your truth. You begin to notice things you used to ignore, the way your body tenses around certain people, the way your heart sinks after certain conversations, the way your soul feels dim in spaces you once called home. and now you can't unknow it. The most painful part of awakening is not the loss of others. It's the loss of illusions. The illusions you clung to because they felt safer than reality. The belief that love meant sacrifice, that suffering was noble, that you had to earn your right to rest, to receive, to be. You realize how often you confused connection with control. How many times you confused love with survival. Because for so long, you didn't really know what love felt like. You only knew what it meant to work for it, to fight for crumbs, to twist yourself into someone more convenient, more palatable, less intense, less you. But now there's a fire in you. Not the kind that rages out of control, not the kind that destroys. It's steady, low, sacred. It's the fire of someone who has finally decided to stop abandoning themselves. You see, the moment you begin to choose yourself, really choose yourself, everything changes. Not immediately, not easily, but deeply. The people who loved you only when you were soft, silent, and selfless, they begin to pull away. The roles you played to keep the peace, they start to crumble. The dreams you chased just to feel worthy, they no longer fit, and it can feel like losing everything. But you're not losing everything. You're shedding, peeling away the layers of who you were never meant to be. And beneath it all, you're meeting the parts of you that have been waiting patiently, perhaps your whole life. The part of you that doesn't settle. The part of you that says, I'm not here to perform. The part of you that knows love shouldn't hurt. The part of you that remembers what it felt like to be whole before the world told you otherwise. And when you meet that part, you don't just heal. You return. You rise. This is the transformation. No one talks about the silent revolution of coming home to yourself. And while it may feel like darkness, it's really just the womb of something holy being born. There will be days when you still question everything. Even after the tears have dried, even after the breakthroughs, even after you've felt that undeniable sense of inner knowing, yes, this is who I am now, doubt will creep in like an old ghost. And that's okay. Because awakening isn't a straight line. It's a spiral, a return, a remembering that happens again and again, deeper each time. You'll have moments where the old world calls you back. The patterns, the people, the version of you who was easier to digest. And for a heartbeat, you'll consider going back. Because healing can be lonely, honesty can be expensive, and choosing yourself can cost you everything you once thought you needed. But there's no going back, not really. Because the second you see the truth, you can't unsee it. You can't unknow your worth. You can't unfeel the light you've touched. You can't unlearn the way your body responds to safety now, how it softens only around what's real. So you keep going, even when it's slow, even when it's messy, even when it feels like no one understands what you're becoming. And here's what's beautiful. You start meeting others on the path. Not in crowds, not at loud parties, but in quiet corners of life. The bookstore, the yoga mat, the stranger who says something that lands like a message you didn't know you needed. They too are waking up. And you recognize them not by how loud they are, but by how deeply they listen. Not by how perfect they seem, but by how gently they hold space for truth. They've been through the fire too, and they didn't run from it. These souls, they won't try to fix you, or shape you, or question your process. They'll just say, me too. And those words, they're holy. Because when you're walking this path, what you long for more than anything is to not feel crazy, to not feel alone in your ache, to feel even for a moment like someone else gets it. And someone will. They always do. Because pain may be the doorway, but connection is the bridge. And when you begin to connect from your soul, not your wounds, not your performance, but the raw, unedited you, everything softens. You no longer seek relationships that validate your abandonment. You no longer chase those who can't hold your depth. You no longer pretend you're fine when you're unraveling inside. Instead, you begin to speak, gently, clearly, powerfully. You begin to say things like, that doesn't feel right to me, or I need space, or even I'm not available for that anymore. And your voice shakes at first. Your body remembers the old consequences, the fear, the rejection, but still you speak. And every time you do, the universe shifts a little, because your healing is not just for you. It's for every version of you that didn't have a voice, and for everyone watching silently, wondering if they're allowed to rise too. You're showing them it's possible. You're showing you it's possible, that you can be soft and strong, that you can feel deeply and still set boundaries, that you can love and leave, that you can shatter and still rebuild. And the more you trust this becoming, the more you realize you were never lost. You were just buried. And now you're blooming. Somewhere in the middle of it all, there's a moment so quiet you almost miss it when you realize you haven't cried in days. Not because you've numbed out, not because you're holding it in, but because the storm has passed. For now, you notice you can sit with yourself without trying to escape. You're no longer rushing to fix the ache, to fill the space, to numb the silence. The stillness that once terrified you now feels like peace. This is the moment the old you would have called boring. But now, it feels like coming home. There's something holy in the simplicity. A cup of tea and no urgency. A deep breath that reaches all the way down. A quiet morning with no shame in your chest. You've stopped chasing highs, stopped clinging to chaos, stopped performing aliveness to feel seen. You don't need to be the most inspiring, the most evolved, the most healed to be worthy of love. You just need to be here, in this breath. In this moment, you've learned that healing isn't a destination, it's a devotion. 1,000 tiny choices to stay with yourself, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And maybe the most powerful thing you've done is not leave. Not leave your body when the pain hit. Not leave your heart when it cracked open. Not leave your truth when it made others uncomfortable. That presence, your presence, is the medicine. Because the world didn't teach you how to stay. It taught you to run, to shapeshift, to hide. But something in you knew that you could only go so long before the cost of pretending became unbearable. So you chose you, even when it meant being misunderstood, even when it meant starting over, even when it meant grieving the life you built on silent suffering. And now you are no longer starving for validation, because you've tasted truth. You've sipped from the well of your own worth, and it is enough. You are enough. Not when you've healed everything. Not when you've mastered forgiveness. Not when you've finally become someone they approve of. Now, here, in this holy mess of remembering, you are not behind. You are not too much. You are not broken beyond repair. You are sacred. You are rising. And everything you lost was never love. It was control, obligation, illusion. What's meant for your healed heart will never ask you to betray yourself. So you keep walking, with less weight, with softer eyes, with a heart that knows peace is no longer a place you chase. It's who you are when you stop abandoning yourself. And even if the path curves again, even if the nights get dark, you'll remember what you learned in the fire. That being lost is not the end. It's the beginning of being found. There's a tenderness that lives in you now, a softness earned not by ease, but by survival. You no longer flinch at your reflection. You no longer apologize for taking up space. You see yourself now, not the edited version, not the one molded by expectation. The real one, the one who cried alone in the dark and still chose to believe in something better. The one who kept going without applause. The one who broke and built and broke again. That version of you, they are sacred, and you begin to honor them with gentleness, with boundaries, with truth. You don't explain your healing to those committed to misunderstanding it. You don't justify your distance to those who once cheered for your silence. You don't shrink anymore. Not because you're angry, not because you're better, because you're free. And in that freedom, you begin to see the world differently. Not everything is a threat. Not every silence is rejection. Not every goodbye is abandonment. You start to notice the beauty between the noise, the way sunlight hits your skin, the way music moves through your body again, the way you laugh deep, real from your belly. Joy, for so long a stranger, now visits often, sometimes softly, sometimes loud. And love? Love starts to mean something new. It's no longer the ache of trying harder. It's not the hunger to be chosen. It's not the bargain you make with your worth. Love is presence. Love is rest. Love is being held without having to perform. And when it finds you, in whatever form it comes, you'll feel it in your bones. Because now you know what it isn't. It isn't fear. It isn't confusion. It isn't the high followed by a crash. It's steady. It's kind. It sees you. And more than anything, you see you, not as something to fix, not as a project to complete, but as someone worthy, now, always. And if you're still walking that lonely stretch, if your heart still feels heavy and your hands still tremble from all you've had, to let go, let this be your reminder. You're not behind. You're not lost. You are becoming, and becoming isn't easy. It costs everything that was never really yours to begin with. It costs your roles, your masks, your comfort zones, your pleasing, your pretending. But what you receive in return is truth, and no one can take that from you. This life, this version of you is not a mistake. It's a masterpiece in motion. And even now, as you listen, something inside you knows. You didn't come this far to go back. You didn't survive just to settle. You came to remember, to rise, to love yourself in a way that no one ever taught you. And you're doing it, one breath at a time, one boundary at a time, one sacred no at a time. You are doing the brave work of healing, and you are not alone. Somewhere deep in the marrow of your journey, you begin to forgive yourself. Not because everything suddenly makes sense, not because the pain is gone, but because you finally understand you were never meant to carry it all. You were never meant to hold the weight of your family's silence. You were never meant to heal the ones who hurt you. You were never meant to sacrifice your joy for their comfort, and you did. You tried so hard. You gave so much. You bent until you were unrecognizable, thinking, if you just loved enough, stayed long enough, hurt quietly enough, something would change. But it didn't. And you blamed yourself for not being enough, for being too much, for failing at what was never yours to fix, until now. Because now you see the difference between guilt and grief. Guilt says, you did something wrong. Grief says, you're finally letting go of something that was never right. You're not guilty for choosing yourself. You're grieving the years you didn't know how. The younger you who clung to chaos because it felt like home. The version of you who thought love had to hurt. The soul who accepted breadcrumbs because she didn't believe she deserved the feast. And now you're letting her rest. You're telling that younger you, you don't have to keep proving yourself. I've got you now. That's what healing is, really. Not fixing, not achieving, but reparenting yourself with tenderness, sitting with your pain instead of silencing it, asking your anger what it's trying to protect, holding your inner child when no one else did. And through it all, something shifts. Not all at once, but deeply. You start trusting your intuition again, that subtle knowing you used to override. You realize it wasn't anxiety, it was wisdom unlistened to. It wasn't drama, it was truth you were too afraid to speak. But now, you listen. To the whispers in your belly, to the tightness in your chest, to the way your body says yes or no before your mind catches up. And in doing so, you return to your body, the place you fled when the world felt unsafe. The home you once saw as a battlefield now becomes your sanctuary. And it's in this sacred embodiment, this rooted presence, that you begin to feel alive. Not just surviving, not just existing, but truly, fully here. And you realize, for maybe the first time, you don't need to be understood by everyone. You don't need to be admired, validated, or applauded. You just need to be real. And real looks like this: tears in the middle of laughter, silence in the middle of joy, saying no without a story, saying yes without shame, letting love in without bargaining your soul. You are no longer performing healing. You're living it. And that changes everything. There comes a day quiet, unremarkable, no grand signs or cosmic revelations, where you wake up and nothing hurts. Not because life is perfect, not because everything is figured out, but because you've stopped fighting yourself. You look around and the world hasn't changed. The dishes still wait in the sink. The past is still the past. The people who didn't choose you still haven't called. But you're not waiting anymore. Not for an apology, not for closure, not for someone to see your worth and reflect it back. You see it now, you carry it, and with that, everything softens. You make your coffee slowly. You open the windows and let the light in, not because it fixes anything, but because it feels good. You catch your own reflection and don't flinch. You smile, not because you're pretending, but because somehow, after everything, you still have hope. Hope that there's more. Hope that what's coming is softer. Hope that you're allowed to have joy without earning it. And you are. That's the thing you realize when you stop surviving. You don't have to keep sacrificing peace to prove you deserve it. You can just have it. Now, here, in the slowness, in the breath, in the sacred ordinary. And maybe, for the first time, you stop craving a breakthrough. You stop chasing healing as if it's a finish line. You stop needing to be better, to be worthy of love. Because healing doesn't mean nothing ever hurts again. It means you trust yourself to feel it without breaking. It means you no longer run from the waves, you breathe through them. You let the sadness come without turning it into a story. You let the joy rise without fearing it will leave. You let people love you without shrinking. And when something doesn't feel right, you walk away not out of spite, but from self-respect. That's the quiet power of awakening. Not the fireworks, not the applause, but the moment you realize your inner peace is no longer negotiable. The moment you realize you'd rather be alone than abandon yourself again. The moment you realize the most spiritual thing you can do is be honest with your heart, your body, your needs. And so you live, not chasing light, but being it, not performing love, but embodying it, not fearing the darkness, but understanding it's where you found your fire. You look back on the version of you who began this journey lost, aching, doubting everything, and you whisper, "Thank you," because they were brave enough to break, and that break became the doorway. And you walked through it. You didn't just survive the unraveling, you transformed in it,